Welcome back to the Delaware Way. I'm Larry Menti. We are elated to welcome to the show legendary musician, singer, songwriter, most importantly for this show, Wilmington resident, David Bromberg. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And since the show is called the Delaware Way, let's start with Delaware. Why did you settle here?
Well, I had to get out of Chicago. I couldn't face another winter. And I'm a New Yorker, but it's rather expensive. So I wanted someplace might be just marginally warmer, and it turned out I had a friend in town, so it seemed like the place.
And looking back now, the right decision?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, another reason for Wilmington was when we got here, it was 2002, and we were called urban pioneers. You know, we live just approximately 1 block from these studios, and we wanted to be someplace that was getting better. And it certainly has got a great deal nicer.
Yeah, and you've played here a number of times. You've had a relationship with the refurbished Queen Theater. Just recently, the World Cafe Live has announced they're going to be pulling out of that. You're disappointed?
Oh, I'm sorry to see it go. I understand, however, that someone else is talking about taking it over.
And do you get involved in that?
No.
Your affiliation isn't that close?
No. I'm not part of the Queen itself. I mean, I participated when they were raising money and so on.
I'd like to talk more about Wilmington and your shop, because that has quite a reputation. You have a violin repair and sales store. David
Bromberg Fine Violins.
And you also have an amazing collection of violins.
Yes, the collection's bound for the Library of Congress. They're going to try and raise money to buy about 1/3 of it, and I'll donate the rest.
That must be difficult for you to do.
You know, strangely it's not. I've been able to walk away from things in my life. I walked away from playing music for 22 years, and it didn't hurt me. I didn't have a hard time with it.
That's fascinating to me, and I was going to bring that up anyway, but since you're on the topic now, you had this talent that has given you an amazing life. It was a gift that you had that made you, introduced you to amazing people, have given you wonderful songs that you've given back to the world, and then all of a sudden you stop.
I got burnt out, and I have to confess I was too dumb to realize it was burnout. All I knew was that when I wasn't on the road, I mean, at one point I was on the road for 2 years without being home for 2 weeks. That'll do it to you. And when I would get home, I wasn't practicing, I wasn't writing, I wasn't jamming. There's no musician there. So I didn't want to be one of these guys who drags himself on the stage and then does a bitter imitation of what he used to love. I felt it was better to find another way to live my life.
And then you came back.
Yep.
Talk about that transition.
Well, Wilmington has a lot to do with that. Before I moved in, I had lunch a couple times with Mayor Jim Baker. On Market Street, which is where I live and where the shop is, there used to be live music all up and down the street, and he'd like to see that again. And at this time I wasn't doing any playing, but I figured the one thing that I could do to maybe help that would be to start a couple of jam sessions. So I started 2 jam sessions, an electric one and an acoustic one, and I figured I'd endure them for a couple of months and then they'd live or die. But I started to love them, and some really good musicians came, and some of them traveled quite a distance. So I started to enjoy playing again.
It's fascinating that you made that circle. What was it about playing at that level, just having a jam session with friends, I imagine, right, that brought music back to you?
Well, the jam sessions were always just usually with people I didn't know.
Okay.
When there were good musicians, it would challenge and inspire me and make me want to make good music.
And yet, in your career, you've played with some of the world-renowned musicians.
Yeah.
And you still quit. And then playing on Market Street and having a jam session, or playing in Wilmington, having a jam session brought you back?
The difference between a professional and an amateur is a professional can manage to either decline to play when he should, or make it work under very difficult circumstances. And an amateur cannot, you know, they're not used to dealing with whatever might come up. There are great people who are not professionals everywhere.
What did you do during those 22 years where you stopped playing?
I studied violins. I was interested in how someone could look at a violin and could tell you when and where it was made and sometimes by whom. That fascinated me, and that's what I wanted to learn.
Was your collection beforehand or after this? When you started collecting?
I started collecting when I was still traveling as a musician.
Wonderful. I'd like to talk more about your shop and about your career when we come back, if you're going to stick around. And I know you're going to play something for us, and we can talk about the concert you have coming up.
Okay.
Also in Wilmington. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you.
David Bromberg. We'll continue the conversation when we come right back.